If you're an average player, you want to be left alone, all right, because you want to be able to slide by. If you're a good player, you want to be coached. If you're a great player, you want the coach to tell you the truth every day. Did I hustle on that play? Did I make the right read? Did I play the guy with the right leverage? You want to know every play, because you know why? They want to be perfect. Everybody here makes a choice to do one of those three things.
Welcome to the GOAT Consulting Podcast, a podcast dedicated to people striving to be a GOAT, the greatest of all time, serving it up in a way that you can get it in all stages of life.
Hey, I'm Colby Jubenville, and welcome to another episode of the GOAT Consulting Podcast right here in VCE Productions in studio in Nashville, Tennessee. Always at the table, my good friends to the right, the CEO and the founder of the GOAT family of brands, my good friend Tyler Burnett. Tyler, we're glad you're here today, all the way in the Sprinter, all the way up I-24. Low traffic, we're in for the long haul today. And to the left with the shirt that says 2020, bless your heart.
We'll talk about that.
We call him the LinkedIn Whisperer, Captain Kent Sugi, my man, the calming force to our show, John Byers.
Thank you. It's very nice.
We also have another person that's not in studio, but joining us at the table all the way from the Lockton World Headquarters, Peter F. Clune. And we heard the F stands for fun, and we'll bring you in just a second to talk about that. But let's tee it up first. We are the GOAT Consulting Podcast. We serve it up in a way that you can get it. We're like Waffle House. In our 20s, they teach us to get in the game. In our 30s, they teach us to move up in the game. In our 40s, we try to stay in the game because those 30-year-olds are so damn good. In our 50s, what the research says, we finally ask ourselves, what is it that I really want? We hope that today at the table, you'll take part of this conversation and say, what is it that you really want from it today? And then it's about the GOAT, or the greatest of all time. In sports, it's easy to see. It's people that are recognized for their greatness. They elevate the play of those around them. But in business, it's people that compete on unique perspective, unique education, and unique experience. What they do gives them energy, and it gives other people energy, creates new levels of challenge and new levels of opportunity. And John, you were so gracious enough to bring Peter to the studio today with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you as our friend says, and let you do all the hard work there. Spencer Thompson, where is he today?
He's coming.
He is coming. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you. And Peter, we appreciate you being here. John, I'm going to let you take it from there.
Yeah, so what a treat to get to have you, Peter, and have you join us. And, you know, who knows? A lot of times these episodes will, the topic, the name of the episode will come out as we move through. But I just kind of thought maybe the name of this could be Pete from Corporate. I hear you oftentimes introduce jokingly in some ways yourself. The irony in that is how uncorporate Lockton really is. Maybe we'll get to that at some point. But currently you are the Chief Executive Officer for Lockton, who is the world's largest privately held insurance brokerage firm. And that's super cool. And you also are the first non-Lockton family member to ever take the reins. And I guess that means you're the GOAT of the non-Lockton CEOs of Lockton, right?
Absolutely.
Is that kind of like in 1998 when I competed in the Georgia Olympics as a wrestler and I won first, but I was the only person to be in my weight class?
It's the same but different. That's right.
So, Peter, welcome. It's so good to have you. I could go on and on through your cool bio and some of the great stories that we have. Hopefully that'll come out throughout here, but thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I will give one clarification. One of my great mentors was John Lamello. And John Lamello was the CEO as a non-Lockton. So over the 56 years, I'm the second. I don't want to kind of start off with a lie or self-embellishment. I mean, those I already have some.
Pete,
I already had some other self-embellishment, so I didn't want to start with one that I really didn't feel like.
You can't let the facts ruin a good story.
That's
okay,
right.
We just got to go with it.
I love it.
Already putting John in his place. Thank you for that. We need that from time to time.
There you go.
Well, we're so excited to have you in this conversation. Love the red-ish jacket that you're rocking today. And you're kind of known, by the way, for some of your hot attire over the years. So maybe we'll talk about that along the way. But one of the ways that we honor our guests, Peter, is we ask them to catch us up to today. Literally, this day, this moment, this seat that you're sitting in. And maybe you do that with 3 or 4 moments that really help describe how you got to this day in your career, your life, your family. So good to have you. Ready, go.
Sure. Ready to go. Well, first of all, I'd say I think my story probably won't be as exciting as some of the other guests that you've had, but I think that I think we're all on these similar journeys going through life. So I think there'll be some real similar parallels to what I'm sure each of you and, most of your listeners have been through. I think on my story, the one big key to who I am today comes from coming from a big Catholic family in Kansas City, where my dad had 11 brothers and sisters and my mom had 9.
Wow.
And those aunts and uncles, as you'd go to family reunions or Christmas parties or Thanksgivings, that's where you really kind of learned how to talk on your feet.
Yeah.
But if you brought a girlfriend to the party, they're like making fun of you, making fun of her, asking where your other girlfriend's at, and you just, as a kid, you're kind of like freaked out to even, what you wear, what you're gonna say. But then you get to watch and emulate them and see how they make people laugh, how they connect with people, how they treat their parents. And so the family and the mentors and the role models I had all here in Kansas City was a really, really big part. And then also, gosh, I went to all boys high school, Rockers High School here in Kansas City. And I still today have a group of, 20 of us that it gets together regularly. And so that long-term friends that kind of keep you in check, that never let you get too high, really never let you get too high or low, that show up for you when you're, going through a hard time. But that relationships of extended family and extended friends, I feel like such an advantage, and it has really helped make me who I am today. And then, you look career wise, I was the guy, got out of college. I didn't like school. I wasn't a good student. Even my first job out of college was a sales job, but I was probably still then more worried about playing softball with my friends or still going out and drinking. I mean, just still kind of acting like a college kid, and it didn't go great. And I remember I changed to another firm. 2 years in, I went to work for a Zurich-owned company, Universal Underwriters. And I started like in May, and it was luck, but I landed like 3 huge deals. And at this new company, everybody was like, God, this is the best salesperson that's ever lived. And he's going to win Top Gun, and he's only been here for 4 months. And I was like, gosh, I've never really had anybody performance-wise talk to me as being one of the best. And so I actually started running maybe faster than I had before, because I didn't want him to realize, like, hey, this guy's not really that good.
I'm still waiting on somebody to have that conversation with me.
That's right.
By
That's
the way,
right.
yet to be
Sit down, John. Listen, it's time.
It'll happen
But
this
I really
afternoon.
I took off as hard as I could, and after a couple years, they were looking for someone to open up an office in Minneapolis, and quite frankly, no one in the company wanted to move to Minneapolis. And my dad always told me, like, you're gonna have to move around if you want to really reach your full potential. And again, I took that position and went up there really focused and built one of that best offices, and then got moved up to come down and run the country for that firm. And then I joined Lockton in 2006, and that was taking over another team in the St. Louis office. And again, I'm a young leader at that time, starting, not effective, wearing a white tie, kicking the trash can when you're mad.
I think
But
that
really,
white tie, by the way, like is a legacy in St. Louis. Like, what would you share with us about the infamous white beautiful tie?
I just think I was coming into like this kind of button down blue suit organization or industry, really, like the boring insurance. Back then you either wore a blue or a black suit, and I was more like this today, right? Just as going to be a fun sport coat. And I just think people were kind of like, that's a little.
We don't do that here.
That we don't really do that here. And no one really told me. So they were all talking about it, kind of, I think it was kind of the joke. Well, then times changed a little. And then I kind of looked like this pioneer because dress went less casual and people wore different things. And so luckily they didn't tell me because I probably would have stopped. But I think for the first couple of years there, they were like, gosh, who is this kid they brought in here?
Peter,
But again, I think growing as a leader, they moved me back to Kansas City. I'm from Kansas City. So to get to come home to Kansas City, when I came back after running St. Louis for 5 years, the next 7 or 8 years, I worked for the family, working with the series, but I didn't have any direct reports. I just helped the offices either recruit or, go out and build a business. But everyone's like, what do you do? And I think that's where Pete from corporate started, where I'm like, oh, you guys, I'm from corporate. We're here to help. But I think you realize with no real title and no real authority, because we're a decentralized company, you have to just bring value by understanding the offices and how you can help. And there's a servant leadership to that. And so I think 5 years ago, after being Pete from corporate, I became COO of the US business. And then 2 years ago, I became CEO of Lockton Inc. But I'm not sure the titles even matter. I think it's just, you're just leading different, bigger teams. And so I think it's been good. You mentioned a couple moments in life that stick out that helped, create who I am. And I think one of them, so I have 3 daughters. My wife has rheumatoid arthritis. So we had our first oldest daughter, Lily. We had her, but because of the medicines that you go on with that, they're good medicines, but they're not pregnancy tested. So we decided to adopt. So long story short, when we went through the adoption process, we went through a place called American Adoptions, where you put your book together, the family picks you. Like, we went up to Cleveland and met this family that was going to adopt our daughter. It's just a man and a woman, and they weren't married. She was a foreign exchange student that didn't go back to Brazil. He's US, that just got out of the military, didn't really have a job. We went up and met with them. They're super nice. They picked us. She has a C-section, so we go up to get the baby. And I think on the way up there, you're thinking, gosh, I hope this family doesn't change their mind, because we've already, told people.
Did they choose you before you went up to visit with
them?
We
went up and did like a visit, and where they interviewed us and went to dinner. So they picked us. So we knew 5 months ahead of time, working with them, that we were going to be the parents. But for whatever, 30 days after, you can change your mind, is the birth mother, which they should be able to. But at the time, it was all about us. For me, like, I hope they don't change their mind. This is, we've gone through all this time. And when we were up there that week, she had a C-section. So first of all, if you just have the normal child through normal labor, the parents leave. But with the C-section, you're all in the hospital together. So like, there's the 4 parents in the room. It kind of felt like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when the parents are all around that one bed, but you're all in there for a couple days. And I'd take him home, and you'd see where they live, and they didn't have washer and dryer, and you're taking him to go do their laundry. So when his, girlfriend gets home, she has her laundry done, and you're at the laundromat realizing how hard this is. Then they get released.
What year was this? Lunch. What year was this, Peter?
This is 2008.
Okay.
2008. But then you go to lunch, and this is the point. After lunch, you go back, and you pulled up to drop them off, and the mom's in the back seat, kind of crying, talking, saying goodbye to her child. And now you are leaving, realizing, like, did I just take their child because I have, more financial means? Am I leaving with this person's baby almost? But it flipped, and it really impacted me in understanding how fortunate I am, and maybe how unfortunate others are, and it had an impact that I still think about.
Mm.
One other piece on that, I have 2 daughters that were adopted. 2 years later, that same adoption agency called and said that the same couple was pregnant, and they
Wow.
wanted to know if we would like the child. Now, my name's Peter Clune III, and my only rule for my dad and grandpa was to have Peter the IV. So I'm thinking, hey, this is it. This is Peter the IV.
Right.
And so they're like, well, it's a girl. So I was like, God, I'm not sure if we want another girl. And my wife then said, no, yes, heck yes, we want a girl. So I have 3 daughters, and those 2 are biological sisters.
Wow. That's
and
super
are
cool.
fantastic. But that whole process has just made an impact not only on less fortunate, but kids in poverty and kids that are neglected. Has really changed how I think of things.
Can we
so
camp
that's
on
one
that for
thing.
just a second? Because you and I relate a little bit to the adoption story. We've got a daughter who we've adopted also, and totally relate to everything that you were sharing there. And my adoption actually came shortly after I started with Lockton too, which I didn't realize that yours was post Lockton. So that's really neat. But I have a question around that. Like, are there lessons for you through that process that you just described that transfer to the role that you sit in today at Lockton? Because I could make up some stuff based on what I heard you just say, but I'd be super interested. Do you think about that, and what would you say to that?
Listen, I think that I started talking about my family, my friends, my experiences. Take this experience. I think how we show up at work and how we act is a reflection of all these experiences. That makes me more aware, really wanting to give back to the community. Makes me more aware of our benefits to our people having children, the adoption benefits. It makes me more aware of giving back to the community. It's such a good, our founder, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, he got a lot of things right. His point of giving back to the community and helping those most in need, because I think this was a turning point for me when I maybe started thinking about others more than myself. And I think that as a leader, that's what it is as a young leader, you think it's you. When's my promotion? What am I going to do next? And then there's some time that clicks that you're like, God, that has nothing to do with me. It's all about the people. It's all about the teams. It's all about, that their journey. And I think that was even my mindset, like I mentioned before. I hope they don't change their mind. We've already told people,
Right.
we've bought the baby bed already. And then you leave there like almost sick to your stomach, that knowing that this mom is making a selfless decision for her baby. And so I think it did change me as a person. I think it changes me as a leader.
That's very cool. I want to bring up one other thing the story that I've heard. There's lots of Clune stories out there that are really special. But this one was back in 2006. Again, probably you were wearing the white tie when shortly after you started, a couple of the guys took you and your wife on vacation, St. John's or somewhere, I believe. John's Island, maybe? I can't remember.
Yes.
And you were really fearful that because you guys were having a good time, they extended the vacation. They wanted to stay a few extra days. And like, you're leading this whole series region of the company, and you were really afraid because you were the quote unquote new guy that you were going to get in trouble because you stayed a few extra days on vacation. So I'm just curious, like, as you fast forward, now that you are in the role that you're in, the largest privately held firm in the world, like, are there still ways that you feel like, I can't do that, I'm going to get in trouble? I mean, how's that evolved?
I'll tell you a story that happened this week. And it was, I brought my oldest daughter came home from Arkansas. She's going to be a junior, and she's going back down. She got a great job in labor and delivery. She's in nursing. at a hospital to live there for the summer. So she's just here these couple days. And her friends aren't home from school yet. And I was leaving on a work trip for our, 500 people going to Florida for the employee benefits conference. And she's like, can I come?
Oh, wow.
I want to come. I've never been on a business trip with you, we went out of town. And I was like, gosh, I'm the one over the years that was like, people call and they're like, can we bring our dogs and our families and grandmas? I'm like, well, I mean, I think you can, but it's a business trip. So I had this like anxiety that I was bringing my daughter on the trip. And so I started off my presentation by saying, I really didn't have permission, but I brought Lily and I'll make sure that I pay for all of her food. And everybody laughed and it went through there. But there is this piece, right, that you want to make sure that you're not setting rules for yourself that are different than the rest of the group. And there is something too that I think you get more comfortable modeling the behavior. That if someone could bring their child on a work trip, fantastic. And so I think that of wanting to stay longer was more about, I just started and I'm on vacation and now these guys are saying we're going to take more time off.
Yeah.
It didn't feel right back to the team.
I resonate so much with that, being the CEO of my company. And I adopted 3 girls as well, so that's unique. But I have that same feeling, it's like, golly, I want to go do this, but I feel like that if I do this, I'm going to be looked at this kind of way, and I want to be the leader, and everything you just said is such a unique feeling. You're like, well, I have the authority to kind of do whatever I want, but at the same time, that's what people think, right? Well, he could do whatever he wants, but at the same time, we're constantly thinking, I got to lead by example, and I got to do all the things that you just mentioned. It's a unique perspective, a unique position to be in.
No question.
I think that speaks to the uncorporate nature of the firm that you lead, right, at Lockton. And some of the things I imagine we'll get into in a few minutes around how that was very intentional and set up in a very intentional way. At that time, I mean, at least when you started, you were learning that that's some of the culture. When I started, it was only a week that I had been here where we got the call, completely unexpected, like your adoption story, where it was like, hey, can you be in Arkansas tomorrow morning? I've got your daughter. She's 3 days old. Can you come get her? And I was supposed to be on a plane to St. Louis the next day. And I remember calling Kevin McDaniel and Dan Leary and saying, hey, like, I can't be there. And they said, no, you can't be here. Go get your daughter. And then a few hours later, once we have her and I sent them a picture, I get a picture back because it was a state of the company meeting, 400 people in the audience, and a picture of our daughter on the screen, and it says, congratulations, John and Vanessa. And all of this talk around Lockton being a community-centered, family culture type of a company all came true for me in that moment. And I thought, they really meant what they said. And I think you probably could resonate with some of that too, especially with having Lily there with you this week. So, Peter, one of the ways that we honor our guests is we ask them to give us their definition of a GOAT. Would love to hear yours, and then share a GOAT, 2 or 3. Sometimes we've had people share a GOAT moment. Zima, in fact, was a GOAT at one point. So
I miss those days.
People, place, things. Give us your definition of a GOAT, and then share a GOAT with us if you would, please.
Sure. I mean, my definition is probably not as sophisticated as a lot of the answers you get, because I think the GOAT, like you guys say at the beginning of your pieces, it's not just the greatest athlete. There's so many different roles. Mm-hmm. GOAT teacher, right? And so mine, the GOATs that I look up to has this combination first of someone reaching their full potential. And so when I really think about someone reaching their full potential, that might be different for somebody what their full potential is from where their starting point was. I saw some article the other day where this lady's holding this malnourished child, feeding it water, and then you see the same picture with that child at 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
Going to school and working the job, and you're just like, oh my gosh, how did that child reach that potential. So I think it has this combination of full potential, something around a unique path, or they took risks, or they didn't just follow the way everyone else did things. And then the third was there's some sort of a positive impact. It made what they did had a positive impact on other people, on the community, on society as a whole. But I think when you look at those three things, where that person is reaching their potential, their way, in service of others, that's really how that's how I define it. And me defining it, I'm not sure.
I love
is
it.
how others would.
No, I like it.
Their potential, their path,
Their way.
their way. Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I put chase their dream, however, on their own
That's
path.
good.
You know.
I like it. All right. Here's your goat moment. Who or would you say would fit that definition for you?
So, at the beginning of COVID, so I was CEO on May 1. It was 2 years.
Which, by the
And so
way,
the
I haven't said this yet, but this shirt, it says 2020, bless your heart. That's something we say down in the South here. And I wore it for you because you took the reins, like you're just describing, May 2020, and then immediately almost announced that we're shutting things down for a while. So I wore this for you, 2020, bless your heart.
There you go. And I just say this, if I was starting May 1, the 3 to 4 months before, you're kind of preparing for the role. Well, the 3 to 4 months before May 1 was, February, March, and April. And we were making decisions that as they were coming up, I actually had second thoughts on if I could do the role. And I had anxiety when people were saying,
sure,
should you send people home? Because you also had extremes on both sides. People like, you can't, when you were first saying, let's stop international travel, people are like, you can't do that, And then on the other side, people are like, if you let people go to the office, they could, all die. And so as these decisions really heated up, I was freezing a little bit. And I just began working with a coach. Maybe talk about this a little bit, Simon Sinek. And Simon Sinek started asking me questions about Lockton. And he was saying, tell me about Lockton, the values and the beliefs. And the answers I gave him, he was like, like those answers aren't very good. Like, you work there. Like, this sounds like a brochure. And I'm, always a consultant tells you that, you're like, stupid consultant. Like, he has no, but he pushed me harder to ask for whatever you could find. I'm like, I've Googled Lockton. He goes, no, ask. It's amazing. As I kept asking, I on my phone now have 50 hours of Jack Lockton. What was he saying at the end of the 84 State of the Companies when they were $7 million, 85, 88, 90, 95, 2003. He gave speeches to clients. So I have the speeches that he gave, there's a bunch of articles and radio interviews. And as I really look back to start to understand Jack, it happened one night. I was sitting there and I had these two articles, and one was written in 1986 and one was written in 2003. Right before he died of cancer, by the way. So he founded the company. We've been here 56 years. He dies in 2004. But if I'm looking at of cancer, but as I'm looking at these two articles, one of them is 1986 for 9 million. The other one was 250 million, almost 2 decades later. And I'm reading them and I'm like, he's saying the same thing. Like these quotes, like I feel like I say like different stuff every 90 days, and he is decades later saying the same thing. And the more I realized it is he got a lot of things right early on. And, you said earlier, we're the only privately held firm, billion-dollar privately held firm in our business. He is saying we are going to stay private. in 1986, where there are like 22 people above a dry cleaner. And he's making this passionate speech that that will never go public. And I'm like who's trying to take you public? Like it's 20 people above a dry cleaners. But he was saying that if we really, really want to give this unbelievable client focus, that you were going to have a caring culture, a different culture than people had ever experienced. And he thought if you went public, that eventually that focus on the people and the client would become an inconvenience on the way to a shareholder return. In a financial services business, that was his belief. And so he talked about it nonstop. He also, one of his great quotes when they're asking him, what's he think about all the successful people that Lockton's created? He quotes one of his mentors, Ewing Kauffman, who used to own the Royals in Kansas City. And he says, it's no fun to drink champagne alone. And not only do they stay private, they take a margin that's a third of what our competitors do. And that lower margin leaves more money in the system to take care of our people and their families. And he made this deal in the mid 80s, and it's still there today. And so when I look at the GOAT, when I talk about someone who reached the potential, I can't believe this guy started, but he quit an insurance company in 1966 and joins his parents as their one sales rep.
Yeah.
And now we're at this $3 billion firm, 10,000 people around the globe. And when I really ask myself, why is Lockton having the success? It really goes back to the 5 or 6 things he got right. I almost feel like the pressure's off me. It's almost a letdown when someone does a podcast or an interview with me because they're waiting for some big, merger and acquisitions, McKinsey strategic plan. And I'm talking about caring culture, intense client focus, staying private at a lower margin. One of the things he got really right early, in his office upstairs, there's this letter on the wall. And it's a guy named Carl Harris quitting to join Jack. And the letter is Carl Harris to the firm, the Glen Falls Insurance Company, that he's quitting. But he's basically in the letter saying, I'm quitting because you guys pushed all of the decisions to corporate. You pushed all of the empowerment, everything there. He's like, who but the people out closest to the client really know what we need? And that letter sits on Jack's wall, but Jack right then in 69 says, we will never become a firm that the bunch of corporate people at the center are making rules of what our clients need. We'll build a system. We'll set the values and we'll set the philosophies about how we treat people and the client focus, but we will empower the people closest to make those decisions. And when we look at it today, I mean, the reason you join is people want to be able to make decisions. They want to be able to take care of their clients. They want to be cared for. They like that we're private. We don't have a bunch of reports that we're doing rather than serving the client. And none of that's me. I picked Jack as the GOAT because he got some things right that at scale, by the way, are actually, he seems smarter today than even at the time.
Certainly ahead of his time. And consequently, as was released this week, I mean, Lockton's got a 97% client retention rate, whereas the average is 84% in our industry. And that's pretty impressive. So, but he certainly follows your definition, reached his full potential, and maybe that has perpetuated over the years, even since he's passed away, carved his own path, his own way, positive impact.
Well, I mean, I think for Jack Lockton, it was his path, his potential, and his way, and you seem to be someone that continues to see not only the importance of that way back when, but the importance of that today. And are we ready to take a break here?
I think we're gonna wind it down for a second.
Let's wind it.
Will you hang out with us and we can finish this conversation?
Absolutely.
So for Tyler Burnett and for my good friend John Byers and for Jack Lockton, his path, his potential, his way. Peter, we appreciate you being here, and we'll be right back in just a second. This is the Go Consulting Podcast.